am Taylor Schroll, and this is Jonathan Blevins. I feel like I have to say his name by his full name. It's not his nickname, because the man who once went by Bearded has lost his beard. John!
I am still a son of the Father, Taylor.
You are a son of the Father, but you are a child of God in the sense that you look like an actual child.
Thank you. It's gone. I'm sad. It's coming back fast, though. You see that?
It is. You're doing the full Andrew Luck neck beard right now.
Better believe it, baby. You can't see it because the front covers it normally, but it's always there.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I noticed. Like even going back and looking at pictures and seeing pictures of when you had the beard, I realized that it's mostly neck beard.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Just like a chia pet.
Which is funny because like that's how I talk about like my head, because like now I'm at the point where like I gotta stay bald most of the time, but like for a decade I've been a chia pet. I let everything grow out and then I just shave it all off, and I look like a small child. You look like an offensive lineman in high school. Like, not that you used to be one. Like you like when you first shaved, you look like you were currently in high school, and I was mad at you for many reasons. One, that you shaved the beard. Two, that you looked young.
Because we learned recently that I'm older than you by a lot.
You are older than I thought we were like the same age. I actually never really thought about who was older. I thought we were like the same graduating class though, for some reason. And I thought we were like right around there. And we realized, like I was streaming with you on Twitch the other day, and we realized that in high school, I would have been a freshman when you were a senior. So like what's crazy is like that dynamic is not the dynamic that you and I have, like freshman and senior in high school. But at the same time, I'm glad it's not the dynamic we have, because what I did as a freshman in football and track and everything, I made all the seniors look bad because I was so good at things. So I'm glad we don't have that relationship. So I'm not making you look bad. I'm here to make you look good, man.
I appreciate that. And you're proving that by showing me that even someone 4 years younger than me can have a little bit of gray, even though I haven't had any yet. But it's okay. I'm balding, so it's a horse apiece.
You are balding. And I started noticing that too. But yeah, dude, for a long time in my life, like I knew I was going to go bald. I've shared this before on the show, but it might have been 3 years ago when no one listened. So we'll share it again at my grandfather's funeral. Obviously not a happy thing, not great, but like, where can we find the joy, right? And it was one of those things that like the whole family was sad, but the comedic relief at the funeral was that his 8 grandsons, myself included, I'm the youngest of the grandsons, we were the pallbearers, right? And it went from oldest to youngest, and it looked like the pictures of like the monkey becoming the human. You know what I'm talking about? It looked like that, but for male pattern baldness. The oldest guy was completely bald. The next guy had a little bit of hair. The next guy, and at the time I was like 18. I had all my spikes going and everything, full head of hair. So that was the comedic relief. So even at funerals, we're able to find a little bit of joy. You know, that's the thing. So
would you say that you were the bald bearers?
Really? You're going to make jokes about my grandfather's funeral?
Sorry, we don't joke about anything serious. I forgot.
Not at all. That's actually that's a great segue, John. We're going to get into that here with, I want to share a couple of things. So this week we are celebrating 2 of my favorite holidays. May the 4th, obviously one of my favorite, Catholic holidays. May the 4th, and with your spirit. The celebration of Star Wars and all the great spiritual writings of St. George Lucas. And then also the second one, Cinco de Mayo, because we all know that's a very important holiday here in Texas. And it's not the holiday anyone thinks it is. It's a very strange holiday. It's just a battle, nothing about independence. It's not our July 4th. It's a very strange holiday. But I got to drink a lot of margaritas, and I had Mexican food 3 times yesterday.
Ooh, nice.
All right, but first we got to talk about May the 4th, and we'll get into that little thing that you segued into about joking about holy things. So on May the 4th, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I know that you have seen the movies and stuff, but I am like a huge nerd when it comes to this stuff. My wife is totally into it now. I have her reading the books. Like she's completely into it, dude. She loves
There's books?
Yes, I'm allowed to read, John.
What's next? Pokemon books?
There are Pokemon books. My son reads them all the time. But we spent the day, we watched a lot of Star Wars. They surprised us. The Clone Wars finale, this thing that we, like actual Star Wars fans, have been waiting for a decade. The finale came out 4 days early. Like just we just watched a ton of Star Wars, and Star Wars has meant a lot to me. And like, it's one of those things that like you and I, like one of the first things whenever you were co-host like a year and a half ago, we talked about how I never cried. And then over the last year and a half, I guess I've started to have a heart, you know, like my heart grew half a size that day or something like that. And there's a lot of moments in Star Wars that I tear up. And somebody much holier than you or I asked me a few months ago, they were like, you've been realizing this and you've been opening up your cold, dead heart, and you're realizing that there's a lot of bad in there and a lot of good in there. And, you know, as you're going through that stuff, like, why is it that this stuff like makes you tear up or creates emotional spots, whether it's like good or sad or whatever? And I put that together in the style of a litany of the saints, but it was all Star Wars characters. So you, as a sane human being, as a Catholic person, you see a litany of the saints style thing on Twitter. Like, what are your natural assumptions about that? Not me, not anything. You see a patron saints asking Star Wars characters to pray for us. What are your first, like, what do you think about those kinds of tweets?
So if I saw, I'm scrolling through Twitter and I see a tweet and it's just a litany, but it's done to Star Wars.
Yeah.
That's all I see it.
Yep.
I would immediately read it to see if it's supposed to be like making fun of the church, or if it's somebody who is Catholic who's making a joke. Pretty quickly probably find out that it's someone who's Catholic making a joke. Decide whether or not I think it's funny, and then laugh hysterically.
Right. So here's the thing. I posted this thing, and I'm just going to, like, usually I save, like, as a storyteller, you save the end for the end, right?
Yeah.
But we're in the age of The Last Dance, the documentary we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, and they're going back and forth in time. So here's what we're doing. I'm going to start this off by saying I got a very little bit of pushback against this. Most people saw it, and they're sane human beings, and they reacted like you did. And they're like, oh, Taylor is a Catholic person who works for the church, who is generally in line with the church. We know he's kind of insane, but he's trying, right?
Yeah, he's trying.
And most people read this and they thought it was hilarious. I personally think that, I'm not comparing myself to anybody else's work, I personally think this is my greatest achievement.
Oh, wow. You have children.
Well, yes. Point noted. I'm going to keep with what I said. So
great.
So I did this thing, and I set this up with two ways, John. One, people got mad at me, and two, Star Wars has meant a lot to me, and it's made me realize that there are things in Star Wars that have been important to me. So I was like, I'm going through these characters, and I'm like, how can I share this in a way that shares like what these characters have actually meant to me? And I was like, as I started writing, I was like, this would be hilarious in like a Litany of the Saints format.
Yeah.
Quite obviously a joke. Some people didn't get that. But here's the thing, and I know that you've watched the movie. So Saint Luke, right? I thought it'd be funny to start with a real saint name. just kind of throw people off.
Luke Skywalker.
Do what?
Luke Skywalker.
Correct. Yes. What is Luke the gospel writer's last name?
What?
What I just want to prove that you know Star Wars better than you know the Gospels.
I don't know. I don't know his last name. I don't think anyone does.
Yeah, we don't. I just wanted to make you look bad. Okay, so Saint Luke, patron saint of second chances, because he's the hero in the original trilogy, and then he leaves and he goes off. And how does he end his whole thing? He sacrifices himself and saves the rebellion. Like, he gets a second chance after he made some big mistakes in his life. I love that, because I too have made some mistakes in my life. We'll talk about that in the final segment.
Okay.
Saint Kylo. Shout out to Caitlin T with Tolkien. She loves Kylo. Patron of the redemption of sinners. He was the bad guy for 2 movies. Yeah. And then he turns. Like, redemption is happening. Like, I love redemption stories because I need one.
I love that you're seeing yourself in all these amazing characters, because you are amazing. Keep going.
Well, I mean, I'm connected with these people. That's what stories are supposed to do. They're supposed to connect with people. And just like the saints are things that like I should be striving for, right? These characters and the great qualities and them being a hero are things that I should be striving for. I'm not saying that I'm just like them. You wouldn't know that one. St. George, though, I thought this was funny. George Lucas, patron of stories. Pray for us.
Oh, that's good.
He wrote some of the best stories of all time. You know, St. Luke might have written some better ones, but you know, after the scriptures, some pretty good stories.
He's up there.
Yeah. Let's see who else we got. Saint Leia, patroness of standing firm in your convictions. She stood firm in her convictions even through hard times, like literally like give up the rebellion or we're going to blow up your planet. And then she's convicted, but she also wants to save, like ultimately she wants to save lives, and she does what she can to save the planet. Ultimately, the bad guys blow up the planet, but she did the right thing.
Yeah.
And she's just a woman of conviction. And I, John, strive to be a woman of conviction.
You have my favorite Jedi in there, Saint Windu.
I do have my favorite. Okay, so but I kind of make a joke at Saint Windu. So read the Saint Windu one. You got it?
Yeah, Saint Windu, patron of the military and peace officers.
Okay, so that one was kind of a joke. I want to see if you know. Like, I'm a huge Star Wars guy, but why would that one kind of be a joke?
I don't know. I really don't know. I only remember him in the movie that Jar Jar Binks is in, because Jar Jar Binks is my favorite character, and he was one of the coolest Jedis. He is one of the coolest Jedis. Here's the reason that it's a joke is that like being the patron saint of the military and peace officers is kind of a dichotomy, because military is all about fighting. The Jedi were all about they were a peace maintaining order. They were not supposed to be military officers. And what do we know all of them as? Military officers. So okay, I see what you're doing there.
The failure of the Jedi Order was forgetting who they were. So like parallels for the church. Like what is our mission? Our mission is to go make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and teach them to observe all the commandments. Like to go out and evangelize. So like the only way that we will fail, like the Jedi Order did, is if we become insular and start changing our mission, right? Some things we can learn there. Who else do you know? Saint Anakin, patron saint of deathbed conversions.
Love it. I love it. He was the pod racer.
He was a pod racer. But why the deathbed conversions? Come on, you know this.
Because he had a change of heart, but on his deathbed.
He did. You're correct.
Yes.
I was like, wait, you just said pod racing. That's not the thing that Anakin Skywalker is most known for.
But the video game is awesome.
The video game is awesome. That is true. One of the things that cracked me up, Saint R2, and I spelled it out like a human person, ARTOO, just to make it make sense. Patron of loyalty. Those droids are some of the most loyal people or beings of all time.
Yeah, love the droids.
Saint Kenobi. This one was crazy because we were saying like, oh, these are things that I strive for. Patience is not a thing that I'm built of. Saint Kenobi, he literally saw everything fall apart. Obi-Wan Kenobi saw the Jedi Order fall apart. He's one of the only survivors. And what does he do in response? What I would do in response is go out fighting in a blaze of glory. I would go and I would take as many of the bad guys out with me and die. What did Kenobi do? He had patience, and he went and waited on a desert planet by himself for many, many years to protect Luke and protect the future of the Jedi. What great patience, right?
A desert father. I love it.
A desert father. I should have consulted you about writing some of these.
It would have been my only addition to the thing.
Oh man, you're good at this. Saint Yoda, patron of the interior life, because he was always like, oh, let's ponder this. He not a man of action, a man of inaction. It's kind of a joke and a jab at Yoda as well. Okay, so that's kind of the gist of it. I've got it all on my social media at Taylor Schroll. But so I got that. Like, obviously, we're having some fun, and the whole point was these characters have meant something to me. They're things that I want to strive for. Just like the Saints are people that I absolutely adore. Sadly, I know more about Star Wars characters than I do about the Saints, but they're all people that we're striving to like take the good in them and striving to live like that. Yeah. And like it was an obvious joke. Like no one that knows me thinks that I'm praying to Saint Kenobi. Like that's not a thing that I'm doing. It's obviously a joke. But so it's this weird thing that like a lot of comedians talk about like about this. It's like there's in our society, like there's so little things that we can joke about anymore. Like everyone just gets offended by stuff. And it's like, come on guys, like we can't joke about things. And like, I get that like sainthood and litanies are holy things. And like some people would argue, and those are people that probably don't listen to the show, that like, oh, it's sacrilege or whatever to talk about holy things and joke. It's like, dude, like I joke about the things that I care about. Like if I'm making fun of people and joke, like I joke around and poke fun at you all the time. I wouldn't do it about like some random guy that shaved off his beard. I wouldn't make fun of him and be like, whatever. I don't care enough to talk about it. I'm going to poke fun at you because I care about it. Right. Is that like, so jokes about religion and Catholicism, like it's kind of the thing we do. Like that's kind of my thing. So it's this weird thing when people are like, oh, like If it's not for you, fine. That's okay. Like, I don't need everybody to be a fan of me. But like, really? You're going to come at me for for doing a fake litany? Come on.
Taylor, only Jim Gaffigan is allowed to poke fun at the Catholic faith, okay?
So here's the thing. Here's what's funny about that. Is like, as bad of a Catholic as I am, I'm better than Jim Gaffigan. Like,
But nobody's better than his wife.
That's true. Yeah, he's not, I mean, like, he barely practices Catholicism. I'm trying, and like, he jokes about it. Everybody's like, oh, like, whatever. Anyway, so that's the thing. It just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I'm like, I'm having fun. Like, guys, we can have a little bit of fun with our faith. That's kind of the whole Forte Catholic thing. Okay, last thing that I kind of want to yell about. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
May the 5th, or May the 4th was the Star Wars.
Cinco de Mayo. I'm sorry. Please correct yourself.
Cinco de Mayo, correct. So I went to pray with some of my friends, and one of the prayers that we did, we prayed the Rosary, because like Cinco de Mayo, Mexican holiday, Our Lady of Guadalupe, Mexican saint, like just like she appeared in Mexico, big deal for the Mexican people. And then we get to, I just want you to stop me whenever this gets ridiculous. This is the end of the prayer. We prayed the Rosary, and then we're praying this. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary of Guadalupe, that in thy celestial apparitions on the mountain Tepeyac, thou didst promise to show thy compassion and pity.
Weird.
It's so strange. Why is it strange, John?
I don't know. It's written like it's the King James version.
Yes, it's written in Old English, and we're talking to Mary, who appeared as a native of Mexico to a Mexican young boy, and we want to talk to that lady in Old English? Come on, church.
That's weird. Who wrote that? You?
No, it's like a prayer on the internet, like for Our Lady of Guadalupe. And I'm like, guys, what's the whole point? The whole point of the incarnation, Jesus coming down to be one of us. Not only was he one of us in general in humankind, he was a Jewish man in Palestine. Like Mary, she was a Jewish woman in Palestine. But how did she appear to the Mexican people? As one of them. Like, she incarnated her, like, not in the same way that Jesus, like, she became what they were so that they could understand. And now we want to, like, whiteify it and take this Old English stuff and put it on it. It's like, how have we as a church not understood the incarnation of Jesus and the apparitions of Mary, where she shows up to people as they are, and then we try to make it this old culture that doesn't even make any sense? Like, it's Old English isn't even special in the church. Like, people can argue for Latin, that's fine. But like, Jesus wasn't speaking Latin. Mary wasn't speaking Old English when she appeared in Tepeyac. Like, she was speaking Spanish.
Is there a Spanish version of Old English?
No, because they're not insane.
Yeah, that's wild. We love to do that, bro. We love white Jesus too.
Yeah, it's crazy, dude. It just rubbed me so much the wrong way. And like, it's just like, I feel like what Our Lady of Guadalupe does, the reminder for me, like the challenge for me, because I think this is ridiculous, but I think I can do it too, where it's like, I need to practice the incarnation of my own life. Like, Jesus came to be one of us in all things but sin, right? But me as a Catholic, me as a missionary, me as a podcaster, like all as a speaker, all of these things. If I'm just bringing my own stuff and my preferences to people, I'm never going to reach the amount of people that I could if I was meeting them where they are, right? We right. Like, you have a youth ministry background, I have a youth ministry background, so I think it's just kind of on my head. Like, so many people try to bring this Old English style of youth ministry to kids now, and they're just like, what? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, I don't know. That was my rant for the day. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I agree with you. I think it's kind of outrageous. Also think we should just start telling the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe more to better understand it. I mean, I've listened to some pilgrimage stories of even just the people in Mexico making the pilgrimage every year, and the kind of celebration that happens there, and the kind of things that they do in order to honor Our Lady of Guadalupe. It's beautiful. I mean, it is cool. And I've just learned a little bit about it this past year because my pastor is big into it. So I agree with you, man.
It's so funny because you just painted me into a very weird corner completely on accident. You're like, we should talk about this story more, and we're already 2 minutes over.
Not you and me. Not you and me. The church.
Other people need to do that.
I don't know enough about it to talk about it more.
Me either. I just came to yell. I didn't come to share with people the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe. But anyway, we're going to be right back with Pete Burak, a friend of yours. Do not go anywhere, guys. We will be right back for our second segment of the day. And then we're going to add somebody else. It's going to be a good time. Don't go anywhere. Hey, John, so the last couple of weeks I've been talking about me being on Twitch, and I love being on Twitch, but you're the master. So why do you love being on this whole Twitch thing?
Twitch is super fun. I love a couple things about it. I love that you can form a community of people that actually do become your friends and people that you love and care about. And so hanging out with them any night of the week is just like hanging out with your friends, which is a blast. I love to be able to share the gospel in a place that desperately needs it, because sometimes it can be kind of a dark place. And I love playing video games with my buddies like you, Taylor.
Aw, you're so cute. Yeah, so we're having a lot of fun. You and I have streamed together a couple times, and then we obviously stream separately as well. So at Forte Catholic for me, at Bearded Blevins for him. Even though you shaved out the beard, it's still Bearded Blevins because it would be a mess to change it all. So go give us a follow. We're having a lot of fun, especially here during the quarantine. But John, you've been doing it for a long time, and I plan to do it for a long time. This isn't just a quarantine thing for us. So come hang out. We've been having a lot of fun.
Can't wait.
Yay. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I'm still Taylor Schroll. He is still Beardless Blevins. But we brought one of John's friends on, a guy I only know by listening to him on another podcast. Yes, there are other podcasts I listen to. I don't just listen to mine. That's a lie. I've never listened to mine more than 10 minutes because who would do that? So, John, I want you've never been able to introduce anybody to us, but you know this guy better than I do. So why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest today?
Pete is my long lost brother, best friend if we lived anywhere near each other, that I got to meet at some conference at Franciscan over this past summer, I believe. And afterwards we hung out, got to know each other a little bit, and then went to the worst restaurant in the world unless it's 11:45 p.m., which is Applebee's. Half off apps, baby.
Yeah, it was
Right,
glorious.
I got it right, right?
Absolutely. And we were in Steubenville, so there's limited options all the time, but definitely at that time. So it tasted good to me.
Yeah, I was wildly impressed with the university and not so impressed with the area around it as far as options for eating that late.
Yeah. No, the Holy Hill is a special place, but the surrounding valley, we love it, but could use a little work.
So here's the thing. I hated that y'all told me right before we started the show where y'all met, but you only told me that it was an Applebee's. You didn't tell me which Applebee's, and I have some information to share with you people. Are you ready for this?
What have you done at that Applebee's, Taylor?
I worked at that Applebee's for a year.
What?
That specific Applebee's. I went to Franciscan for grad school for a year until I dropped out because we had a kid, and that's where I was working there in my year of grad school. I was working there my first year of marriage. I was working there my first time having a kid. Like I worked at the place. Like, what year was this? I might have been your server.
This was this past summer, so there's no way you were a server. But let me ask you, Taylor? What is your favorite? You worked there. What's the best half off app?
I always got. I had the fried green beans were really good. The boneless honey barbecue wings, very good. Mod sticks you can always go to. But that's not what we came to talk about today. It just blew my mind that that's where you guys met. And I worked there, which is absolutely wild. But so Pete, that's how you guys met. Pete, I was just listening to a podcast from 2017 because that's at the point I am in the quarantine. You were on Tony Vacinda's show, and I was listening, and I was like, man, this guy's phenomenal. He's doing some great things, particularly with the young adult community. So why don't you just introduce what you're doing, what your ministry is, and what you're doing for young adult ministry.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Yeah, so I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan with my wife, and we have 4 kids. And a few years ago, after I had graduated from Franciscan, so this was in 2000, I graduated in 2010. In 2011, feeling very called, like most Franciscan grads, to do something in the church often. And there was a ministry in town called Renewal Ministries, which has been around now for 40 years. Dr. Ralph Martin, Peter Herbeck, and Sister Ann Shields are the leaders of it. And I'd grown up with them, and I just felt called to. They were the first people to go to when it came to ministry. And as we started talking, this growing desire to reach my generation, our generation, emerged in me. The best way I can describe it is like a holy discontent. I just had this restlessness in me that we needed to do something to help evangelize and disciple people in their 20s and 30s. And when I looked at the state of the church, there's a lot of high school ministries, a lot of campus ministries, and then a lot of fits and starts when it comes to parish-based young adult ministry, and especially anything that would go beyond just gathering young adults together in an ugly church basement to, talk about theology, to actually have some sort of deep transformation in community felt lacking. And so for the last several years, we've been just making as many mistakes as possible, figuring out a lot of what doesn't work, and continuing on with the whole goal with ID. That's the name of the organization, ID, is to help young adults become intentional disciples of Jesus Christ. Meet him, fall in love with him, begin to share him with others, grow in holiness, go make disciples, do it as a family.
John, have you ever been a participant in one of these terrible young adult, like not the ID ones, but the negative ones that he was talking about? You ever been around those?
Yeah, I definitely have. It inspires me to do better young adult ministry at my own parish. And the last one I was at, it can be rough. It can be rough.
So I too, when I was a youth minister at a parish before where I work now, I too was inspired by going to young adult things and things not going well. And I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start a great young adult ministry. And I started it. And it wasn't that great, which is why we brought Pete on today, because I mean, listeners of the show tend to know that I think that I'm great at everything that I do. But this was the one area that I found myself lacking, was young adult ministry. So what are some of the things that you have found that, I mean, because obviously this is a response to what wasn't going so well, and y'all are doing something. So I want to walk through some of those things one by one. So what was something that you saw lacking, and how are you responding to that, and trying to change some things so that young adults can have a place where they could grow in their faith and have a little fun, other than here on the internet, because Forte Catholic is obviously the best. But you know, Pete, you can be like 1.5, and John's definitely in 5th place.
Solid,
especially since he shaved. Yeah. So where to begin? I'd say one of the first things is I've spoken to many people across the country who have a real hunger to build young adult ministry. Often it's a youth minister who has a slash in their title, which means 99% youth and 1% young adult ministry. Another thing to consider is every parish I've ever talked to has young adults in their top 5 or top 7 pastoral priorities. And then when you look at their budget, space, personnel, doesn't reflect that at all. So one thing we have to recognize is that the level of investment we put into something is going to be directly correlated to what we get out of it. And so young adult ministry as an afterthought means it's going to be probably a relatively small group of eclectic people who have big hearts, who don't really quite know what they want to do together moving forward. So that's one thing. The other thing is, whenever anyone thinks about starting something for young adults, the first instinct is always, well, let's gather young adults in the room and see what they want, which I think is birthed out of a good desire for subsidiarity or whatever, and kind of buy-in. But the fact is, we know what they need. It's not a secret what young adults need. We need Jesus. We need an encounter with him. We need to be filled with the power of the Holy Spirit. We need people to do it with. We need a people to journey with, or an extended family to run this race together. There's a reason why different gyms and different movements really appeal to our generations, because we want to be a part of something that's bigger than us. But all those things, like a CrossFit, don't say to their new participants, like, hey, like, what do you want? What do you need? They're always like, hey, do you want to get fit? Actually, they don't even say that. They're like, hey, do you want to be a part of us? Do you want to be a part of what we do? If you do, this is what it means to be a part of what we do. This is our vision. This is our mission. This is how you plug in. And in the context of that, we're going to teach you how to be a member of this tribe, right? And we love that. But in the church, it's almost always the inverse of that. It's like, let's gather people together to then discern our vision and mission, and then hopefully people will buy in. And so what that often looks like is the lowest of low-hanging fruit of the really well-intentioned people, but they don't necessarily have the gifting, or they haven't been called, they haven't been anointed to build something in their community. And so we found it's much better to discern what is God asking, what does God want to do in this community, and then see who is excited about that vision and mission, starting with the why, right? And then getting to what and how, as opposed to the other way around. I can go on and on. I could give you 3 hours of things like there, but I'll pause if there's any thought on that.
So you said CrossFit, and I was with you till you said CrossFit, because I too joined CrossFit to be part of the community. And then I'm fat and out of shape, and I tried to do it, and it was too hard.
Sure.
So like, I think one of the things that I found in the young adult community that I started, and when we did have a few good things happen, one of the things that I had a challenge of as a leader was, there are some people who are here that like went through youth ministry the whole time. It's like they were just kind of looking for their next youth group, which is a balance of, let's have some fun, let's grow in our faith, let's have conversations, kind of be a community. But then there was also a lot of other people that were like just moved there. We had a lot of young adults that, like, just specifically where I was working, there's a lot of plant workers that they just were single by themselves, moved to this new place, and they came in and they were like, I mean, I go to mass every Sunday, but they had never had any other kind of formation or ministry or these kind of things. And like, to me, it's like, that's like me going to CrossFit. Like,
Sure.
you know, I was completely lost. So like, a lot of times these young adult groups, at least in my experience, are smaller. And so the range of people there is much more evident. So how do you not have my experience at CrossFit and going and being like, I don't belong in this community that I want to be a part of, you know?
Yeah. And that's a tricky thing too, right? So, because as a church, we're certainly called to love and welcome everyone and journey with those who want to be journeyed with. But the very nature of community means there are people who are in and those who are not. And that's tough, right? Like, it's not something we naturally feel good about, is to say those, like, because then it can drift into almost like a tribalism. Oh, we're in here, and it's almost impossible to penetrate, or a cliquey situation, which we've also, I'm sure, experienced in young adult communities, where you go and everyone there knows each other and they're completely content with that being the extent of any sort of relational dynamic. We're good. If you happen to show up, well, if you can plug in, great. But if not, we're not really that interested. So the thing that has driven us is a quote from John Paul II, where he said, it's one of my favorite quotes from him. He said, communion and mission mutually imply and interpenetrate each other. In other words, when you say communion, you're implying mission. And when you say mission, you're implying communion. And he says, communion gives rise to mission, and mission is accomplished in more communion. So in other words, like, out of our relationship, we are sent to what end? To bring people back into the relationship with us. And the number one reason I don't think we experience authentic Catholic young adult community is because we don't have a commonly defined, well-established mission. Mission is the lens by which the behavior of the community is dictated. So if you don't have a clear mission, you're not going to have community. And if you don't have community, you're not going to have a mission too. They go hand in hand. But very often we set out to build community, but never define the mission of that community. And therefore, you're just going to end up drifting and going through what we like to call the 3-year young adult death cycle, which is first year's really exciting, second year plateaus, 30 years of steady decline when something good happens with one of the leaders, like a new job or a baby, or they get married, and all of a sudden the whole community lives in fear, because what if the associate gets reassigned, or what if one of our best leaders gets a new job somewhere that pays them more money? We don't want those things, because then it detracts from the movement of where we're going. But if the mission is the thing that's gluing everyone together, then you can handle the weather the storms of ups and downs and trials and tribulations, because mission continues to define the behavior.
Yeah. So what is the mission of these ID groups, or however you would word it, like the young adult groups that you guys are inspiring and helping? What is that mission? Because I think that's been the biggest question for me, because I like almost exactly what you described. It wasn't 3 years. We did that cycle in about a year and a half, because me, the leader, got a job and left, and then the thing fell apart. You know, woohoo!
Yeah, right.
Taylor's a failure. We'll talk about that in the next segment. But so what is the mission that you guys are gathering around, and the mission that, like, if people are looking for young adult ministry where they live, what should that mission be?
Yeah. So at least from an ID perspective, our big why is to help young adults become intentional disciples, right? So what that means is helping them meet Jesus in conversion, live in community with other disciples, and then be sent in a particular way. But what that kind of boils down to for our contribution to that cause is raising up and equipping what we call spirit-filled leaders. Because what we found is that all programmatic solutions, all strategy, all efforts of the church, other than the sacraments, which is another can of worms, but all of those things are, in our opinion, dependent on spirit-filled leadership. So small groups can be awesome. They can be a big dud. Monthly meetings can be really, really great. Or they can be a big nothing burger unless they're led by people who have an idea of what the Spirit is doing and how they plug into a bigger purpose, and actually have some leadership skills. And so ultimately what we try to do in our chapters is to raise up a team of people who are living as Spirit-filled leaders, and then help them discern how they are called to build the kingdom in their community. So all of our chapters hypothetically have the same mission: reach young adults in their community. How they go about it, there's some commonalities because of every program. There's some commonalities between content and some strategies. But at the end of the day, our ultimate goal is not to cookie cutter, do this, do this, do this, do this. It's more of like, the more we can raise up people who can hear the voice of the Lord and act on it. That's like our favorite definition of a disciple. What is God saying to you, and what are you doing about it? Those are the two questions every disciple should be living in. So the more people who are living in that reality and doing it as a family, an extended family together, the more I'm less concerned about how that plays out in particular missions. I want them to discern it. We say it all the time. I'm not called to build the kingdom in Chicago. I'm not called to build the kingdom in Texas or any of the places that we are. But I am called to help the people who are called to lay hold of that calling and operate in that. And we can give them, the analogy we like to use is we want to help you paint a target, and we want to give you some arrows to shoot. But ultimately, we're about investing in the archer, because a good archer can take even a bad arrow and still hit the target. But we could have the best arrows in the world, the best strategies, the best content, the best websites, all these things. But if it's not in the hands of a bad archer, we're still going to miss the target most of the time. And so our whole emphasis is focusing on the archer.
I think that's what people would argue about Forte Catholic. Like, some pretty decent content, but in the hands of the archer, it's not doing so well. John, there was an Applebee's where I'm guessing Pete said nothing burger earlier, and I'm guessing that's what he ordered at Applebee's. Whether that was the name of it, it probably was a nothing burger.
Yeah, I really think all the food is the same. It's like Taco Bell. It just is plated differently.
Exactly.
But still delicious.
Delicious.
Still delicious.
I ate so much Applebee's because I got it for half off. I bring it home all the time. But anyway, we're back to talking about Applebee's. Back in that Applebee's, John, you got to hang out with Pete, and then there was something like whenever you and I were setting up our scheduling time for this, I told you who the guest was. You're like, dope, I love that guy, he's awesome. So what was it about Pete? What was it about y'all's conversation where you were like, I like this guy a lot?
We just had a crazy day. We all kind of bonded over just like what we see happening in the church, and then what we know can happen in the church, with good leadership and with people who are intentional disciples. And so we just bonded that way and had a lot of fun. And then, we dreamt a lot and talked about the things that really a lot of what Pete's been doing. I'd be interested to know like how much you've seen, happen in your own life and in the ministry that you're in from the time we met till now, because it sounds like you're on fire with this, and it sounds like a great idea. But yeah, we just hit it off with all that stuff and dreaming about what we think that the church can be, particularly with like young adults and with parishes and with communities.
Yeah. I remember walking away. I mean, I love conversations with people who don't kind of put limits on God, and don't put limits on new and innovative ways that he may work through the church. And so I was like completely captivated by Jonathan's witness of using Twitch to evangelize and to just like build a following and bring glory to God and bring revenue to his family, all of it. Like the whole entrepreneurial aspect of it just like totally got me revved up. And so, yeah, it was one of those conversations where you just kind of know like, hey, this is a kindred spirit. Like this is a guy, and it wasn't just the two of us, there were several of us, but these are people who we're all kind of on the same team. We're all kind of in the same spirit or stream of the spirit. And it's one of those conversations too, where by the end of the day, you're like, I don't know what this means for the future, but it feels kind of significant. Like this is a relationship that even though I probably will only see you twice a year at one of these weird conferences, it's going to be awesome every time. And there's like, I feel like I have another person I want to champion. And that's one of our core values with ID, is just this idea of like generosity always wins. So the more we can celebrate each other, the more we can collaborate, the more we can build up what other people are doing, the better. Because when every boat rises, no, that's not how the expression goes. Whatever. If we all get better, we all get better. How's that?
I think when every boat rises is something about the Panama Canal. That's a different thing. But
I love that though. This is why I champion Taylor on Twitch.
Yeah, you are a champion. And I love, Pete, that you were right, and you were prophetic whenever you said that conversation in that Applebee's would come to fruition with a lot of fruit, because here it is. It's this interview. We've done it. The 3 Steubenville Applebee's people here talking about young adult ministry and, saving the church and saving young adult ministry. Like we've done it. I mean, I guess Jesus can help, but us, really just us. So, now that we've committed heresy, save the ending of this, man. So as we close this out, Pete, how can people get connected with ID and all the stuff that you guys are doing?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Simplest way would just be to go to intentionaldisciples.com or id916.com. Don't judge us on the website because we are actively rebranding and it's not a very good website right now. So, but you can get the basic information. The other way would just be to email me. It's just Pete at id916, id916.com. We're actively looking for any parish or group of parishes that have a deep heart for reaching this generation, but just need a little help.
Well, Pete, thanks for coming on, man, for sharing your ministry, for sharing your heart, but most importantly, for coming on and bringing another beard that is better than John's. I love that the man whose name is Bearded has the worst beard on the YouTube video.
This is my penance.
Thanks a lot, man. John and I will be right back for our final segment. Don't go anywhere. So, John, I launched the new Forte Catholic merch like a week before the quarantine happened. How do you think the sales have been going?
I wonder how you're skyrocketing, I imagine, because it's beautiful.
Yeah, well, percentage-wise, they've skyrocketed when I sold one. But, whatever. We've only sold a few. But, hey, we're towards the end of this quarantine. I love supporting other people's merch. I'm literally wearing your hat right now.
You are. I can't wait to wear your hat, brother.
It's so comfy. I love it. So if you guys, as you're getting out of quarantine and you want some new clothes, some new hats, head on over to fortecatholic.com/store. Support the show. Support your head. Support your body. I almost said chest. That was weird. There are no brassieres on the site. Support your chest. fortecatholic.com/store.
Boom.
Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Schroll. He is Beardless Blevins. And here in this last segment, we're going to talk about some holy stuff. We're going to talk about the Bible. Are you ready for this, Jonathan?
I love the Bible. I'm ready.
But before we do that, I have to read something for you, and I promise that it's going to make sense. And I don't usually do this, but our friend Caitlin, T with Tolkien.
My favorite.
Like, she almost had me in tears the other day.
Yes!
On the internet, usually, especially on Twitter, usually people are very mean to each other. Not to me, except for those punks that we talked about in the first segment. But usually, I curate, I have some fun, and usually it's like what I was talking about, just like friends poking fun at each other. That's kind of my experience. It's usually not actual negativity, right? And last week was really weird. Because there are some things going on in behind the scenes in my personal life where I needed some encouragement, and I didn't tell anybody that. Not many people really know, and Caitlin doesn't know. And she sent me, she was so nice to me this week. It's unbelievable. Caitlin came on my Twitch stream. She subscribed. She's not a video game person. She just came to hang out. She's such a big supporter of people in general. She doesn't just do this for me. She does this for a ton of people. But she said something that my eyes started welling up, and I wanted to share it with you. Okay.
I'm ready.
She's talking about the show, and she tweeted out, she's like, I have a favorite podcast. And then 2 hours later, I'm going to share my favorite podcast. And then 2 hours later, it's Forte Catholic. It blew me away. T with Tolkien's favorite podcast is this one. And I was like, I literally couldn't believe it. I was like, the other shoe is about to drop. You know what I mean? Because all my friends, we all poke fun at each other, and that's how we love each other. Caitlin's just loving, so it just...
What is this? This must be fake.
So she said, it's the perfect Catholic entertainment podcast. Very silly and lighthearted, but then you always sneak in some good, substantial content. It's an excellent thing to listen to while driving. Rotating co-host means there's something for everyone. Lots of different guests, etc. And, the thing, it was crazy that... it hit me because it was just something nice someone was saying about me and the work that I do. That was a big thing. But the second one is I felt so seen because this is my goal. Everything that you just said is that's exactly what I want. And it was just cool to hey, someone gets it. And I'm really happy. So thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you, Caitlin. Now that I know that you listen to it, I'm going to try my best.
You always do things like that. You're implying you never tried before. There was that one time where I shared the top 10 episodes of the show, and you were on there twice, and Father Anthony was on there 5 times. You're like, oh, now I'm going to share it. I love how
time.
The only way that you're going to do something nice for me is if it benefits you somehow. And I respect it. I respect it. I do respect 100%. It. I really do.
I only host you on Twitch so that it benefits me.
Correct. I mean, I'm sure you've gotten a few followers as well. You know, you're a great guy. Okay, so in Caitlin, as she mentioned, in Caitlin fashion and Forte Catholic fashion, we're going to try to do the holy thing now. We're going to try to attempt to read the Bible. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
The last couple of weeks, we've been just kind of catch people up if you haven't been listening to the last few episodes. My spiritual life was really kind of in shambles around Easter, and I was like, I think Jesus is still in the tomb. And then he rose on Orthodox Easter for me. You know, it took about 9 days for him to rise after our Good Friday. And then I've just been kind of sitting with these stories, as the church has been leading us to, sitting with these stories of the apostles after the resurrection, right? And like, and it's been this weird thing that I've been connecting with, like their pain and loss on Holy Saturday. I've been connecting with a bunch of these different people, and it's like, okay, Road to Emmaus. This is the story from this past week, and you said you love the story, and there was just like one thing that stuck out to me, and I'm going to share that one thing at the end. But for the most part, you're going to share why you like it, because I only have one thing. That's how much I planned.
I go first?
No, yeah. But here, I'm going to read it. Here we go.
Okay.
Now that very day, two of them were going to a village 7 miles from Jerusalem called Emmaus. And this is called the walk to Emmaus, right? And another pronunciation is Emmaus. So I just like to picture them walking toward destination, and at their destination there is a mouse. And they were conversing about all the things that had happened and occurred. And it happened that while they were conversing and debating, Jesus himself drew near and walked with them. But their eyes were prevented from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing as you walk along?" They stopped, looking downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, said to him in reply, "Are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who does not know of the things that have taken place there in these days?" And he replied, Jesus, "What sort of things?" Which is funny because he knows. He was kind of the main character. They said to him, "The things that happened to Jesus the Nazarene, who was a prophet, mighty indeed in word before God and all the people, how the chief priests," obviously that's the whole story of them. Like they just recount the story of Easter, right? He said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are." They just share the gospel with someone that they think is just some random guy. And that person calls them foolish, right? Jesus, how foolish you are, how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets spoke. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things to enter into glory? And then beginning with all the prophets, he re-explained everything to them, right? So they had their understanding, Jesus re-explained it. And then there's the breaking of the bread, they recognize him there. Were not our hearts burning within us. And so there's so much from this story. It's one of our biggest stories. There's so much depth to it. Why do you love this story? What sticks out to it for you?
So a lot, but I can make mine short. But I love that they're walking in the wrong direction, right? They're running away. They're scared. I love then how Jesus meets them and he walks with them in that wrong direction. And youth ministry, people talk about this all the time, how it's like relational ministry, meet them where they're at, walk with them a little bit, but lead them towards Jesus. I mean, he does that. He literally walks the wrong direction and listens. Like, I can't imagine the patience it took for Jesus to be like, "Please, no, I don't know what happened. Tell me." Like, I'm not Jesus, because I would have been like, "Oh, let me tell you, look," and show my hands, right? But like,
he
"Hey,
must
I'm
have been
okay."
wearing gloves or something to not give it away.
Yeah, he was dressed up as Mickey Mouse. You know this. And
Walk with Mickey Mouse. That's the real name of this.
And then he shows love and he shows patience and he walks with them, and then he and then he calls them foolish, and so he gives them some tough love, which I also am a fan of. And he opens the scriptures and gives them like the world's best Bible study before like the greatest, mass ever, with like just alone and Jesus in the house. And so that whole thing, but I love the idea that sometimes throughout life, many times, right? I'm never done. That like Jesus continues to meet me when I'm walking the wrong way and put me back on the path. And so it's just one of those stories that relates to me year after year, month after month.
I like how you called it the greatest mass of all time, because I agree with you, but not for the reasons that you said it. Because
I said greatest Bible study of all time.
Oh, did you?
And then a cool mass.
Okay, I think you said greatest on both.
Did I? Okay, fine.
But going. People can go back and tell us who wins the argument, because I'm not sure either. But it would be a great mass, because there was the liturgy of the word, right, where he's breaking open the scriptures to them, and then there's the liturgy of the Eucharist. But what made the mass so great is that he revealed himself to them in the breaking of the bread. So he broke the bread, and then he disappeared. So like that mass would have been really short, like just a tremendous mass to go to. Great Bible study, great liturgy of the word. just straight to the point. He breaks the bread, and they're like, "It's Jesus!" And they look around, and he's not there. They eat the bread, then they go back to Jerusalem. Like, just nice. It's like daily mass, just a little quick hitter.
Daily mass.
Here's the thing that really stuck out to me. All right, so some of the similar lines of what you were saying is that they are walking the wrong way. They're lost. They feel betrayed. Like everything. Like they gave their life for anywhere from a year to 3 years, depending on how long these specific people walked with Jesus, and like they lost everything. They watched this guy die. Like everything fell apart, and in the midst of them feeling lost and betrayed, Jesus shows up to them, and they don't recognize him. And then, like all the things that you said, right? There's the Bible study, there's the scripture study, there's the breaking of the bread, and then they recognize that he was there. But when was he there?
The whole time.
Literally from the beginning. Like Jesus rose. This is one of the like he's already risen. Like he rose chapters ago. He's appeared to many of his disciples. Like this is the last chapter. It's one of the last times that he appears before he ascends up into heaven. And like they're still feeling this loss. They're walking away. They're trying to figure out what their life is going to look like. And the entire time, while they're feeling dejected and lost, like the way is walking with them. Like literally victory is walking with them as they're in their defeat, and they don't recognize it. But in that moment that they do realize it, it's not just Jesus is here with us, because they're not sad. It's this weird thing that they realize that it's Jesus, and they're not sad that he just disappeared and left them. They're excited, right?
Yeah.
They're excited because they realize that he was there. One, he was risen, and his truth was true. Like, all the doubts that they would have had, and that he was with them that entire time. And that's a lot about how I feel during this quarantine now, right? Where it's like lost, betrayed. Like there's a lot of things been going on just spiritually in my personal life. Like there's just been a lot of crud happening. Yeah. And I'm walking away, and I could feel a lot like these guys in the Emmaus story. And like, God, where are you in all of this? Like, what the heck, man? Like, did you just leave me? Like, are all the things that you said still true? And reading this story, I'm like, even when I feel dejected and lost, like literally victory is walking with me. Like it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was just like, ouch, my heart.
Did you cry?
I didn't cry.
Because that's beautiful.
I only cry when watching Star Wars, because that story means a lot to me.
But no, that's beautiful, bro. That's beautiful stuff.
You're beautiful.
That's inspiring.
Yeah. So like just the fact that in the midst of all this, and I know, like I see it on social media, a lot of people are doing a lot better now. Like I am doing better now, not great, but a lot better than I was a month ago. And I know a lot of people are still struggling and hurting. Just know that like even in the midst of the wandering, like Jesus is still with you. He hasn't left. We just don't recognize him for whatever reason. And I'm not putting fault on anybody. I'm not putting fault on myself for like the feelings that I was feeling. They're feelings. Like I was going to feel them. Like when things are bad, you're going to feel negative feelings, right? But Jesus is there in the midst of them. And like another point was like, look, like a lot of us don't have mass, or we haven't had mass for a long time. I know some dioceses are opening up again this weekend. Others aren't. And like, it's indefinite. Like everybody's going to be in a different boat here. So we've been in the same boat together for about 4 to 6 weeks. It's about to change for everybody at different times. But here's what was crazy is that like they get to the liturgy of the Eucharist part, right? Where he breaks the bread. And what's interesting is that they said, like, one of the famous line from this is like, "We're not our hearts burning within us," whenever he was speaking. And whenever he was speaking, he was doing the liturgy of the word. He was doing the breaking open the scriptures and studying of the Bible and studying of these things. And it's like a lot of us still don't have mass. We don't have the Eucharist part, right? But like where their hearts were burning, if they were longing for Jesus, like the thing that we can all still do is read our Bibles, listen to holy content, like watch stuff on YouTube, listen to podcasts, like just kind of let Jesus speak to us through his word. And I think that's one of the things, like, okay, we can focus on the things we don't have, like the Eucharist. But what do we have? The church says that the same Jesus that is present in the Eucharist is present in the scriptures, because it's the same word. It's the same Jesus. So I think the scriptures is something that we do have. So I'm kind of leaning into that.
Amen, dude. As we should.
Amen to you. John, I feel like we had a good show today. I got a lot of things off my chest. You got a lot of things off your face.
I did. It's always fun, man. It's always fun. I love that what we talk about is just a giant random beautiful assortment of topics.
Yeah, because all of this show is my stream of consciousness. I just take notes throughout the week. I'm like, man, we're going to talk about this now.
I like it. We can go anywhere, man. The Lord is with us.
We can go anywhere except for Emmaus. Or like, I like how you said we can
Or
go
church
anywhere, but we
right
can't
now.
go many places.
We can go anywhere in the show.
On Zoom, in the podcast. We can do anything and go anywhere. John,
stay home.
Thanks for being here. Guys, thanks for joining the show today. Caitlin, thank you. If you could, go give a rating to the show on iTunes. It really helps. God bless you guys. Love you. Love you. All right, John, we've got a new sponsor on the show. And like for the first time, like usually I do all of the work for the show and you people just show up. But you went out and got us a new sponsor. Who's our newest sponsor today?
I'm so excited. Costco, also their Kirkland brand original kombucha with how many? 2 billion probiotic cultures, whatever that means. Drink it today.
If you drink kombucha, you will hate your life and also look like John. So this is not a real commercial. We just wanted to make you laugh here during the quarantine.